Good evening, everyone. The date is Monday, June 9th. The time is 7:03 PM. This is a meeting of the Town of Warren Planning Commission. Calling the meeting to order. First item on the agenda is whether there are any changes to the agenda.
I asked that the STR, the LUDRs be put on the agenda. I guess they
Which-
didn't make it.
I did put on tonight's, your copy, you will see under agenda changes, add status of.
So we'll
At
put
the
those
top
under the
there.
newer other
That's the
business.
wrong,
No, it
that's the
says
wrong one.
STR status MRVPD update.
All right,
No, look at the top where it says agenda changes.
all right. Well, we got it. It'll be number 6. We'll
Oh,
talk
okay.
about the status of the looters.
Yes.
And can we
Perfect.
talk about the
Yeah.
status of the community gathering?
Oh, yes, by all means, that can be,
Add
So
that
that's
as number
that's
6 as
perfect.
well.
yeah.
So that's also on item number 6, community gathering.
Yep.
Excellent. I'm glad to hear there's status to talk about. Let's see. The second item on the agenda is review and approve previous minutes. Do we have a motion to approve them? Or do people need a minute to read the minutes?
Yeah, I haven't read them.
All right, let me take a minute. Let me know when you're ready, Michelle. And then we'll, if you're good, please make a motion and then we can get that done.
What was NDA?
Neighborhood Development Area.
That's what you're gonna be working on with.
Yes,
Or maybe you're already working on with.
well, I
Sam
have met
Robinson.
with Joshua and Sam,
Sam, okay.
and
So that would be a step. Getting that designation would be a step towards hopefully unlocking maybe funding for the town garage, but maybe that's something we can talk about with Keziah.
Motion to approve?
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone. I should say, any objections, any abstentions? No. Hearing none, the motion passes. We have approved our previous minutes. Next item on the agenda is public comment. We have 3 members of the public here for specific purposes. I don't see any other members of the public here, so
Moving right along.
moving right along, let's go to item number 4. Housing conversation with Keziah Haviland. Would you feel okay joining us at the table, or are you,
Sure.
I mean, you can sit there if you
No, no,
prefer.
that's fine. I'm gonna scooch back though, because it's something that I'll contribute.
So although, by way of intro, although I don't know Keziah well, we have had kind of a longish at this point,
5 or so years.
5 or so years. And so maybe you can, would you mind telling everyone a little bit about, maybe everyone knows, but if you wouldn't mind,
refresh our
a
memory.
refresher, and then
Yeah.
actually we'll introduce ourselves.
That would be
to you.
fantastic, because there are a
Okay.
few faces that
Yeah.
I don't know, even though I do know some of you, so.
Okay, well, we can start around, maybe we'll start
Perfect.
first. Dan
That's great.
Raddock, Warren acting as chair.
Jim
know,
Sanford.
Jim Sanford.
Jim Crafts.
Jenny Blaze? Michelle Bennett.
Your neighbors.
And Macon's,
And Macon.
Oh, yes, hi.
and we're missing.
Hello.
Adam.
Adam Zashatovsky.
Here he comes.
Oh, nice,
Adam time.
amazing.
Okay. Do you know Adam?
I don't think so, I might have crossed paths,
Okay.
just like visually from
All right,
glasses.
well, maybe we'll
but-
wait till, since he's about to walk in, maybe it makes sense
Yeah, I can
to,
introduce myself in just
Yeah.
a moment.
yeah.
That would be perfect.
bang on the window and tell them to hurry up.
I ran into Adam at Jazz Fest, actually.
About time, here he is.
Sure. Why don't you grab that chair over there, Adam, since Keziah's sitting here?
I can sit back there.
Really chair.
No, there's two chairs right there.
No, that's fine.
So Adam, you came just at the right time. Keziah Haviland, our first guest today, is about to introduce herself. This is Adam's Justin Telsby.
Good to meet you. Okay, so a little background on me is I currently work for Vermont Council on Rural Development as the director of their Village Trust Initiative. It's a brand new initiative that is a partnership between Preservation Trust of Vermont, Vermont Council on Rural Development, and Vermont Community Foundation. And we're working with 20 small towns throughout Vermont to do community-driven development in their village. So that's what I'm up to now. We just had our webinar for our second round this year, so Warren is eligible. Everyone wants to look into that. But my background and my passion is really housing. So I started in architecture many years ago at this point, and then transitioned from architecture into affordable housing development. And so I've done that all over the country, and most recently worked with Downstreet over in Barrie, doing development all around Washington County and some other towns in adjacent counties. So,
And didn't you headed up the Niagara River Valley
yeah, so I worked.
Housing Coalition?
Yeah, I worked for the housing. The first year that I lived here, I was working with the Housing Coalition, Niagara Valley Housing Coalition, kind of helping them get on their feet. And we did
'Cause that's when we met
pilot,
you,
yes.
as I recall.
Yeah, we did a pilot ADU program.
Yes,
So before the
yes.
state
Yeah,
did BHIP.
yeah, that was really
we
good.
were
I
doing
really loved
our
that program.
our pilot program.
You were hip to it.
You what?
You were hip to it.
Yeah. And so, yeah, we did helped develop a few
Mhm.
units through that.
Yeah,
And did a lot of engagement, outreach, education work back then. And so, yeah, that's how I met all of you. And I through that have a bit of familiarity with this project, but I think back then it was really just kind of an inkling of an idea. And so I'm sure there's been a lot of progress since then in terms of thinking about what you're doing or even taking steps. But
Mhm.
my hope is, first of all, I can hear from you all a little bit about where this is and sort of what you're hoping to do. And then I don't know if I've just been working at BCRD for too long, but hoping to have kind of a discussion and offer any knowledge that I have that I can pass along.
Well, I'll start off.
Yeah.
I don't know that actually that there's been a lot of
Oh,
progress.
Great, well then.
But as you, you still live in the valley, or do you still live
I
in the
do,
valley?
I still
Okay.
live in Waitsfield.
In Waitsfield,
Yeah.
okay. So you'll see there's a couple articles that now Warren's heading towards a bond vote in November. And hopefully that bond vote will pass
Mhm.
and the town garage will be relocated.
Yeah.
And that creates an opening, potentially, one of, just one concept, but a long sort of cherished concept
Mhm.
at the planning commission would be move the town garage and put in some units of, I don't know if it's affordable housing, but let's call
Housing
it
of some
workforce
sort.
housing of some sort.
Yeah.
Jim's way more involved. I've sort of been involved on the communication side of the garage, but of the planning commission members, Jim is by far the most deeply enmeshed. Is there anything that we need to talk about specifically?
Well, we gotta get the bond vote done.
Yeah.
And there's really no reason why it shouldn't pass.
Mhm.
I mean, it's very hard to argue against it.
Mhm.
And that's, like Dan said, is gonna free up that space.
Right.
And there's already a little road that goes in there with a bunch of little houses in it. And I think there's an opportunity for maybe something a little more dense than that.
Mhm.
It's right next to the school, it's walk
Yeah.
away from the Warren store.
Yeah, I
It's
remember.
right where we're looking to have density in the,
Mhm.
Mhm.
in the
Village.
village.
Yep.
It's a nice site, it's right along the river, it's got a million great things going for it. And there's this gigantic septic field right next door.
And one of the reasons we wanted to talk to you at this point is I think frankly, our select board has their hands full
Mhm.
with the bond vote, with selling the garage project. And we want to make sure that if there are things we can do in the meantime,
Mhm.
to try to, I don't think fast track is the right word, but just make sure we're able to keep pushing along. And if there's ways we can, I haven't been involved in, we've talked a lot about housing,
Yeah.
but we haven't really done very much.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was kind of, we
Yeah.
were hoping you could maybe
That's
sketch
great.
out some things we ought to think about and who we should be talking to and
Awesome.
what to do
Yeah,
to move
so
forward.
I'm happy to give kind of a high level based on experience and opinion. Every town, every process is gonna look different. So, doing this well and efficiently is really gonna depend on you knowing your community, knowing how to communicate with them. So I can give you what I know, and then you can kind of use that within the bounds of your community. So yeah, before I came over, I just wrote some sort of, I'm glad this is what you want, some sort of higher level, how would I normally go about this process? And so the first thing that I would look at is really defining your objectives, right? So who is this for? You mentioned potentially workforce, potentially affordable. So looking at income level, looking at number of bedrooms, looking at is this going to be rental or is this going to be home ownership, or are we trying to make it affordable for people through a land trust model where we are retaining the land but selling the home. So there's a lot of different models that you can look at for how you're going to do this. And so the first thing that you really need to figure out is, what are we looking to do here? So that way we can communicate that to the community and do it honestly, and then receive their feedback and try to have that help shape what's happening. And you can do that a few ways. How do you know what you're going to do? Where do you even start? You can do things like market studies, right? Give you some quantitative data that is going to tell you you need X number of this type of unit, all of that. And so that is something you have to pay for them.
Well,
But
I mean, the Mad River Valley, you remember
the housing study a
did
few
the
years
housing
ago.
demand study,
Yeah,
right?
and so I think you could
Yeah.
probably either lean on that, or if you wanted to, at some point when you're looking at funding, even refresh that. Because if you are looking to kind of work through this in a way where the town is deeply involved, or any developer, anyone, they're probably going to need some sort of a market study to get different types of state or federal funding. So at some point, whether you're refreshing that or you're just leaning on the one that was completed by the planning district, that's going to give you some quantitative data. And the other thing is, the qualitative. What are you hearing? What are people saying they need? And so you find this through engagement. And engagement can look so many different ways, right? You can send out surveys. You can go to a farmer's market. If you're having a community celebration, that is a fantastic time to be there and say, we're thinking about this. What do you think? Can you give us, your thoughts on what should be there or what this should look like? And so what you're doing there with that engagement is, one, creating buy-in. People are going to be more interested in something if they've had a chance to voice their opinion and they know that their opinion might help shape what's going to happen there. But two, you're also collecting that information. So you are hearing from people who might actually be living in that housing or might know somebody who's going to live in that housing. My recommendation is not to lean solely on one or the other. So not solely on the market study or solely on the qualitative conversation. But sort of figure out your in between. And so that's sort of like, how do you know? And then there's the sort of the reality of the situation, right? We can find out what we need, we can find out what we want, but then there are all of these factors when you get into development that might end up changing that a little bit. You have wastewater, which is huge, because that, as anyone who works in architecture, design, and development can tell you, often makes or breaks projects. So you have the wastewater, but looking at the potable water capacity looking zoning. You know, what is your zoning going to allow you to do? And then funding, right? So how is this going to be funded? Is this something where you guys are, again, you know, retaining the land? Are you breaking up lots and selling a lot to Habitat and selling a lot to some small developers? So what is this going to look like? And then what funding is associated with that? And again, there's a lot of models. There's a bunch of towns exploring this right now. ECRD has been doing some work up in Plainfield, where there's a group who's exploring how can we use some funding through the town to pay for infrastructure and then sell off the lots to people who are going to build houses affordably. So that's a model. So there's a lot of different ways you can do this, but sort of working through what funding opportunities there are and what role and responsibility you want to have as a town in this. So then the other part of this is also the public support part. And I think, again, everyone in this room probably knows that the way the public feels about your project can also make or break your project. It can take it from taking 1 to 4 years to taking 8 years, having to go to environmental court or having to do all of these things. And so it is so important to be transparent, to give people the opportunity to voice their feelings. There's a lot of feeling when it comes to housing. And so giving them that platform to speak, to talk to you, to feel like they're heard, to let people know how you're going to use the information that they give you, so that they don't feel like it's just sort of a token, okay, yeah, come talk to us, but saying, okay, we're taking this is a piece of what we are considering as we think about the development of this, and this is how your opinion matters, this is how it will influence what we're doing, these are your other opportunities to get involved. And so sort of in concert with the engagement is your communication plan. So again, being clear and transparent, being dependable. So having people know where they can go to get questions answered, putting information out on a regular basis to stop any sort of rumor mill. We all know small towns and live in small towns and love small towns, but we also know how one thing can kind of snowball to be something that it's not, and then suddenly it's a truth that a lot of people believe that you have to fight to say, no, that's not what's happening, versus just trying to get everything out there and stay on top of it from the beginning of the process. So that communication is really important. And then sort of within that, also finding your partners, right? So I was talking about how are you going to do this? It could be selling off various lots to different partners, perhaps Downstreet wants to develop, and I don't remember quite how big this is, but Downstreet might be interested in developing 8 townhomes.
Can we talk about the acreage? Do you know what
It's a
size
little
it
over
is?
2 acres, I
2
think.
acres?
Oh, okay.
Okay.
But there are some constraints on that property.
Yeah.
The fact that you've got a slope, steep slope,
Yeah.
kind of a bowl, and you've got a stream there. We do need to have a new Brownsfield report done.
But the last one was clean.
The last one was
that's
clean in
Yeah.
2008.
Wow. That's great.
So we'd like to be optimistic that we should get a pretty good rating.
Yeah.
And the slope could be a real positive.
Exactly.
Yeah, and so that's all within that sort of feasibility, right? The exploring what can you do, and that fits with the water, wastewater zoning is looking, and I should have named that also, looking at all the constraints on the site. So doing a study of the site to really inform, okay, if we wanted to do all rental apartments, and I'm not saying this is what you shouldn't do by any means, but like, let's say we're gonna reach out to Downstreet and have them do 24 rental apartments, or how many could we get than that? Just saying as an example.
He's
Or
just throwing it
yeah,
out.
or we're gonna talk
I
to.
love it. We could get 24 places in there, it'd be sensational.
Yeah.
We're all about density. This is
yeah.
an opportunity
For
to
density.
have some multifamily density.
And so exploring what's possible within that. And so looking at Habitat, looking for local developers, speaking to Downstreet, once you have an idea of what your site can hold. and how you want to go forward with it. And you can do it early on. You can engage and say, hey, we're exploring this. Is this something you'd ever be interested in? And if so, what would you need to be interested in that? Because Downstreet's going to have certain things that they want to see. They're going to want, a low purchase price on the land. They are going to want to know that there's
We own the
wastewater.
land.
There's yeah,
Or for that, if Downstreet purchases it.
right.
Okay.
Yeah, and so reaching out and sort of saying, hey, we're exploring this. We would love to explore partnering with you. What would you need to do something here?
Downstreet guy in here with the sand, wasn't that the person from Downstreet? No.
I don't think so, but we've certainly had, like, Downstreet came to the housing thing at
Yeah.
Flatbread.
Yeah,
Okay.
Angie was there
Yeah.
for that. So they're willing to talk,
Yeah.
and just sort of tell you what they need and tell you yes or no. It's they know what they can do.
Do they
At
almost
this point.
always own the land of any project they're involved in?
Almost, yeah. I believe there are a few where they don't, but most of them, they end up owning the land.
I'm just.
They have done some where they've developed
on
for
the land
an
lease?
entity. So they'll enter into a partnership where they will actually do the development and they won't own it and they won't manage it, but they'll get a developer fee.
Okay.
I don't know how often they do that or not. I know they're
I was just
One
busy as
idea,
ever.
one idea that we had, I don't know if other people do this, but one idea we had was to go to Sugar Bush and American Flatbread and, half a dozen bigger businesses around here and say, hey, would you guys be interested in investing in some housing for your people?
100%.
And getting those guys to help finance the thing.
I think that's a fantastic idea, and I can't imagine it's changed much since when I was working here, but the need for workforce housing, and that's a need all around Vermont and frankly, the entire country, so.
Are there any examples of people, of towns doing that successfully or affordable in Vermont that we?
as far as
could use
doing
a
it,
model?
other players, other.
Where somebody like, I don't know, GF or Global Foundries or somebody said here.
Yeah.
We'll work with you. I mean, do those exist?
Yeah, there's several towns where hospitals have,
Oh,
so UVM,
Yeah,
has done some.
Our hospital's moving out of town, so.
Yeah,
Can't help you
But
out.
Cabot-
so
Cabot has
Copley just did that, right?
I believe so. I know
Okay,
UVM was
so
looking at that
Copley,
recently,
yeah.
but,
Mhm.
or 2
And
years ago.
Cabot has got a presence in Waitsfield,
Mhm.
that they may be, even though it's in Warren, it's still a better commute than what some of those people may be doing now. you
Yeah.
know?
Copley did,
Yeah.
So-
condos.
I guess, so a question I haven't, because this is not my expertise at all. So that's an interesting idea. Approach Sugar Bush, they want, for example, just to pick on someone, they wanted to do a big project. It's really, the big project they were hoping to do is really expensive and they're having to reconsider. So maybe they'd be interested in another smaller project.
Yeah.
Or, so what do? You just go up and say, what?
Yeah.
Are you guys interested? And
You would
what?
say, one, always keep it, well, this is just my advice. Right now, you don't know what you're gonna do.
Right.
So saying we're exploring this idea, is this something you might be interested in? And same thing you'd say to Downstreet.
Yeah.
What would we need to do as a town to support you moving forward on this? What would be the parameters around moving forward at this project? And say, as we're exploring what we can do on this site, we'd love to keep you in the conversation. It's really, at this point, you guys are all in feasibility, right? You're trying to just
Yeah.
figure out what can we do and who are our partners, and like anybody, what are their needs? And
Yeah,
their
and-
needs
and-
match ours.
Yeah, and I should say that one of the things I think I don't want to say fighting against, but one of the realities is there are voices in town who are like, you know what, the garage is really expensive. Sell that property to the highest, sell that property to the highest bidder and use that to offset the construction costs.
Mhm.
So that's something we're gonna have to contend with too.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think, again, just getting information out there and being clear and transparent. So what is that gonna get you in the long run versus the short run versus 20 units of housing that are gonna be paying into the community, not only through tax dollars, but also through school enrollment, through all of these other things that are through workers, through, so there's a lot of benefits to creating attainable housing.
Is there a way to protect it from, people buying it as vacation homes?
We can put
Certainly,
covenants on it. Yeah, covenant
Yeah.
restrictions.
You can, okay.
Yeah, and it'll sort of depend on how you choose to move forward. You know, if you're just selling it off,
Yeah, no way
I'm
to
not
protect
sure if you
Yeah.
can do that, but if you are creating some sort of, you know, planned unit development or you are retaining the land and having people build on it, you can, as you said, put certain covenants on that. Yeah.
Dan, who did Wheeler Brook? Did Downstreet? Who?
Yeah, that's the
Downstreet did
company.
Wheeler Brook?
So when you said feasibility, it sounded like you were talking about a phase.
Yeah,
So a phase means that you have some kind of process map.
there is.
So what's the process map and
Yeah.
what's the timeline look like
Yeah.
generally
Ooh.
for something of our caliber?
Yeah, timeline's a hard one because there are so many factors on that. I will give you a very broad range of
That's
3
okay.
to 8 years
Okay.
on that. But so process is, you know, as you start with anything, is just the exploration, right? The feasibility, the what can work here, and that can start really big with things like market studies and as we've talked about, mapping out the land to see what the buildable areas are and how many units we can build. Environmental testing,
Yeah.
so all of those really fun things that are going to inform what can actually happen. So that's feasibility. And then once that happens, and sort of once you've decided on your path forward, you'll likely start to engage with planners and civil engineers to work through some sort of schematic idea of what's actually going to be there. And once that makes it through any sort of process it has to go through with the town, you're going to again engage likely with your partners at this point. So whether it's you guys who are actually acting as housing developers, which wouldn't be my personal recommendation, I would work with people who have done a lot of development. So at that point, you'll be working with partners like your Downstreets or your Habitats or your individual small scale developers who would be open to developing 48 units. And they're going to be working with their teams, with their architects, and they're going to be coming up with a schematic design. So the basic overview is feasibility, your schematic work, your design development work, the creation of construction documents, and then construction. You're going to probably start in on funding somewhere in your schematic phase. So once you know that it is physically possible to build housing there, you're going to start looking at how are we going to fund this. And again, my assumption, and again, I could be wrong because I don't know your exact intent before, but my assumption is that you're really going to be looking at the infrastructure part of it. So how can we make this attractive for people to come and develop housing on? And so when I'm talking about the schematic and the development of the design, I'm talking more about sort of the planning aspect of it versus what does an individual unit look like. So funding is going to start earlier, probably within schematic. And then the other thing, as I mentioned before, is your outreach. And, we had those 4 or 5 food construction main categories, the funding, which kind of straddles them. And then the other one that straddles everything is the communication and engagement. Because as I said, this is where projects can really get held up. If there are a vocal group of people who are really against this, it can make things take a lot longer. So talking to people, getting your word out there early, listening early is really helpful. Sorry, that was a little all over the place. I feel like I should develop like a diagram. I'm sure, Britton, if I missed anything, please jump in.
Well, thank you.
I mean, I want, like, in my mind, I want to leap to the funding, like, what are the different funding models, but
Yeah.
that's probably just not it. I don't, how do we learn about them? Is that as we go through, like, next, maybe we figure out
Yeah.
what could go there, what we'd like to go there, and then invite you back and say,
Yeah. Sure,
hey,
I'd be happy to.
or maybe you said we should call up Downstreet
I-
pretty darn soon and talk to them and talk to Habitat for Humanity, pretty darn soon, or all of the above?
Yeah, and I'm happy to think about and also reach out. You know, VCRD has like a wealth of information on how towns go through these processes. So I'm happy to just reach back out to them and see if they have good examples. I don't know if anything comes to your mind written in terms of good examples. Not put you on the spot, but
No, I mean,
yeah.
we
Yeah.
look into the same options.
Right, yeah.
And we've given some good suggestions.
So yeah, there's just that will kind of give you an idea of what's possible. What I will say is, you know, don't try to reinvent the wheel, right? This has been happening, so figure out a process that seems like it's going to work within the constraints of what you're looking at and adapt it for your community.
So in other words, there are enough different models out there already that have been successful, that if we get to understand what some of those are in this type of volume and scale, we should be able to come up with something without, as you said, starting from scratch.
I think so. And
good.
you know, there are
Okay.
lessons learned, and the thing I love about Vermont and the thing I've learned living here is most people are very comfortable talking about what they did wrong. Which I don't know if that's just a humility that comes with our state, but so if there's a model that seems really interesting to you, reaching out, saying, hey, we're thinking about doing this, and what are your thoughts? What are the hurdles that we can avoid?
But going back to the feasibility to know, can we do 20 units?
Yeah.
You know, and I think as far as the wastewater, we've got the capacity, but it's also making sure that we've got water, because we don't have that tied into it. That and just those few constraints of the property itself.
And I'm sure Josh will help you look for grants and various things to kind of take on some of these
He's
studies.
pretty
that-
busy. He's
that
pretty
exist.
busy in Waitsfield right now on the wastewater, but maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Can I ask a question?
yeah.
What's the status of federal funding, given a few changes that we're seeing in Washington DC right now? I imagine that's a real challenge these days.
Yeah, it is. I think there are programs that still exist, and there are programs that at this moment are not there anymore. Vermont has done a fantastic job of protecting some of the programs around housing. So VHIP is a program I am such a huge fan of, not only because they copied our ADU program, but
What's the name of it?
VHIP, Vermont Housing Improvement Program. And so that's more targeted towards small developers, but it's something if, you know, you are portioning off lots and giving an opportunity to a small scale developer, they can get $50,000 per unit toward that development. So there's that. LIHTC, low income housing tax credits, are still there. They haven't got away. So there's still a number of programs that are intact, especially around housing. I think some of the more creative or sort of less entrenched in 50 years of programming use are not there anymore, but there's still funding available. And I think Vermont's done a really good job of ensuring that there's still opportunities to do things like site explorations and planning grants and all of that. So.
Do other folks have questions for Keziah?
Sure, I was hoping if you had a recommendation based on the size of the town and, you know, you could see the size of the government, what you see being a good fit.
Yeah, in terms of
type of, you know, rental, buy, split out lots.
You know, so without having more concrete data or conversation, I don't want to give like a definite answer, but something that I will say just generally is creating opportunity for all different types of people in terms of a mix of, you know, rentals and homeownership, a mix of sizes. So having a starter home, something that I've seen a lot that I think is just great is a smaller 2-bedroom homeownership home with a planned option to grow, right? So something, this is due to COVID, what my husband and I are doing. We thought we were going to build a 3.5-bedroom home, but started with a 2. But we have the plan of how's a 3rd bedroom going to connect, and what is that going to look like, so that as we grow as a family, there's the opportunity for your house to grow. So I would say flexibility and diversity of types of housing are really important things to consider when you're looking at this. And I think that's
Have you
fairly
seen,
universal.
have you seen successful projects that may have a focus on workforce housing, which is one of the things we went to, but also to throw into the mix, maybe some of our elderly who are looking to downsize or need a place,
Yeah.
and having that kind of thing in there as well, you know, the over 55 or over 65 or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, are those successful to have that kind of mix when you've got maybe a single mother with a child who's a workforce person, and, you know, or maybe it's two young people who are just starting out, you know, kind of thing. I mean, I'd like to think that we could have that kind of mix.
Yeah.
In our,
Surrounded by a bunch of cranky old people complaining about the noisy children.
Yeah. Yeah. But
come
also bringing them joy. Because they think to play on the screen.
yeah, well, you know, some of these little children do
Glass
get
half full,
grandkids, you
glass
know,
half empty.
do have grandkids, you know?
Yeah.
So.
I have a question.
Culture thing.
Is it possible, like, would it be possible to kind of bring in several small developers and have them come up with proposals? And then sort of have competing proposals, and that they would be willing to put forth that minimal level of planning, sort of in hopes of getting the project?
Yeah, you can certainly do something called a request for proposals, so an RFP, and send that out there. I would, my advice to you around that would be to really nail down what you want to see ahead
Put
of time.
some parameters on it, and then
Yeah.
within that, the developers could come up with their
And
own
say-
different plans.
Yeah,
And
and
that
I
way we get to see a bunch of different ideas, and then
Yeah.
also the developers kind of maybe get to put an idea forward that suits them and their style, and I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen a lot where they've actually created full-on like schematic plans.
Yeah.
But you know, with an RFP, they'll submit past work that you can look at and see sort of the type of work that they do. And then you can contract with them just only up through schematic or something, so you can see what they're doing before hiring them to do the whole process. I've seen that more often. You know, you could do a charrette. Those can be really fun.
We like charrettes.
You have some people close by who are very good at hosting these types of conversations.
Yeah.
And that's a really great way to engage the community. And especially if you invite an architect or a planner, or even better, an
Architects
architect,
plural,
planner,
please.
and facilitator to be at each table. You have your bases covered in terms of like, how are we going to get ideas? So you have your facilitator kind of having that conversation back and forth, your architect who understands the built form, your planner who's going to understand how to bring all these elements together, and then the voices of the people saying, this is what we'd like to see. So you can do a charrette and get some of those ideas as far as like, what could this look like? And then again, present those back to the community and another opportunity for feedback. So that, as far as getting a bunch of ideas without having to invest a lot, I think that would likely be your best bet. There are no shortage of architects in the River Valley, so hopefully you can get some good volunteers for that. But yeah, I feel like that's a more likely scenario in terms of people are just so busy right now.
Right.
Camilla, Macon, do you guys have any questions at this time
Or comments?
or comments? Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I just have one. I mean, first of all, this has been terrific, and a lot of my questions have already been answered. I really, really appreciate the time, because the one area that I think as a group we should figure out is the process for deciding what we want to do with that property. If it were to go to the highest bidder and become a bunch of Airbnb rentals, I'd vote against the bond. I don't want it there. But I think that we can consider the story we want to tell about what moving the garage unlocks, right? I think would be a really compelling part of getting the support for the bond. So even if we can't decide to, or rather we can't develop it so quickly, and of course we can't, the idea that we could decide what we want to do with the property, engage people who might have other ideas, but ultimately I think there's some consensus around housing, and just does that mean the select board has to like say something, or is that the planning commission, or it seems really important to have that clarity, right? For the town, and I'm just wondering how that's been expressed before to kind of give that initial shape.
I have an idea based off of what you're saying, Macon. So I'm kind of backtracking this map and seeing that it is actually a common route of like before you get to construction documents, you're in design development. Before you're in design development, you're in schematic. Before you're in schematic, you're in preliminary.
Mhm.
So if preliminary involves like programmatic elements, then our duty at this phase in the game is to set our program, aka our list of wants and needs and what we're looking for, so that we could provide that wish list to our potential future partners,
100%.
right?
Yep. And at this point, and I think that was a really important point, is this the story that you are going to tell around this. And I don't mean stories in some made up thing, but as in like, what is the narrative of what you're trying to do and how you're going to do it and why? So like you said, if it's sold off at the highest bid to make a whole bunch of Airbnbs, it might not get support. If you're saying, we'd like to turn this into housing for our community, we're looking at workforce housing, we're looking at a variety of housing types. We want to hear from you what this should look like, and how we can do our best to meet the need that's here. So if you're explaining how this process is going to happen and what the end goal is and what the benefit of that end goal is up front, I think that's a really smart thing to do, because that means you're starting to get the clear message and your intent out there early, and you're building trust early on, which is the biggest thing. Is you need the community to trust you, and to do that you need to be transparent and you need to have an ear open for them.
Is there an easy way to quantify? I mean, one of the things you mentioned was there are all sorts of long-term benefits to, having that area used for residents. And you mentioned tax, and you mentioned workforce, and I'm sure you mentioned school enrollment.
Yep.
And I'm sure there's probably others. But I do think that's something that we're going to have to address up front, because for very obvious and good reasons, people have said, again, the garage project is expensive. Why don't we just sell the land? So how do we, is there a tool you're aware of to go about?
By the way, Dan, have people said that in like public meetings?
I see Camilla nodding her head.
Well, people have said that, certainly had maybe a couple comments at town meeting, but at the town garage walkthrough that we did, we did an open house. That was the concern of a couple of people who came to that in particular. So yeah, I have heard it in more than one place. Because, people are looking for ways to offset the cost of the bond. So they're saying, not only are they looking for, income, say take that land and get some income to reduce the bond, but they're fearful that on top of the town garage development project, they're also going to incur costs on developing housing. So there's a lot of fear around that out there.
Yeah, and that's very common. So again, when you're looking at your feasibility and how it's going to be funded, that's going to be one of the first questions. Are we imagining this?
I want to touch on this again, because Dan, you said something earlier that I just think is a false choice, and I need it to be corrected if I don't understand this. You kind of presented this idea that we could do something for affordable housing, and we could do that after we get done with the garage. Or we could sell it to the highest bidder to offset the cost of the garage now. It seems to me that like we could still get value from the land, albeit perhaps not highest market value, earlier in the process, and be able to include that in the story. And as a taxpayer, that seems to make sense to me. But I don't understand why we are not like including this in that story, and why we are waiting until we're done with the garage to do it. I just want to make sure I'm not missing a big piece here.
Who is we?
Well, I
I
yeah.
think he's saying.
I don't think we have a story yet. I don't think there is a story yet. I think it's our.
I just saw the
duty now
FAQ
to
and all
develop
that.
this
Yeah,
story.
okay, okay, well,
We're
good. I'm
creating
glad
the
we're talking
project
about it. I just don't think we need to
narrative.
wait until we're done with the
So
bond.
it's up to us to
Plan on
create the framework
garage.
of.
Wait, there's two people talking at once. Who wants to go? Adam or Macon?
Go ahead.
Do you want to?
I'm just saying, like, I think it's a false choice to say we have to wait until the bond on the garage is over before we can really start planning in earnest on affordable housing at this garage. And I also think there's a potential case to be made that there's value financially of the affordable housing direction that could offset the cost of the garage. But I have not heard anyone raise that. It seems to be sort of these separated things. That's all I'm asking. Is can't like how could we combine them, and has that been considered? And if not, can we?
Can I respond to that super
Please,
quickly?
please,
before-
absolutely.
Yeah.
So you're right, and it's you don't have to give your property for free to Downstreet or something. You know, it's there is value. It's probably not going to match the price of the highest bidder, but no developer. I mean, they would all love it, but no developer expects to come in and not have to pay for the land. So there will be payback. And as you look at this structure for what does it take to put in infrastructure, you know, what does this look like? You can factor that in. You can factor in, you know, 200,000 for this, you know, quarter-acre lot for 12 units from Downstreet. You can factor in. So there will be payback immediately. It just won't necessarily look like the Airbnb developer who is coming in and doing some very fancy high-cost units or something. So I think you're right. And you can also look at various models. I mean, maybe a few of the lots, if you choose to do lots like that, are sold off for a higher value, and then some of them are balanced with more affordable. So there's a lot to explore. You guys are early on. And so I see Camilla.
I see Camilla's finger up. Adam was. No, Camilla, it's yours.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Go ahead, please.
Go ahead, Adam. No, I just wanted to sort of respond to the piece that Macon mentioned about, you know, why are we saying it's either now or afterwards. And as I've said before, the reason, what I am saying from the select board's perspective, is that the select board does not have the capacity to tackle this town garage development project and bond vote and the affordable housing redevelopment project at the same time. That's why we basically said, gotta separate the two right now because we have to focus on the garage. Having said that, and I think this is why you guys are having these conversations, what I believe we said was we welcome the planning commission gathering some information, getting some scenarios to then bring to the select board and say, hey, here's more information. Does this help us? Can we move this forward alongside at the same time? As far as the select board is concerned, that's not a project that we can handle at the moment.
But if we can do some groundwork,
right,
and come up with kind of a vision, even if it's kind of soft and fuzzy, that at least keeps people from thinking that, well, where's all this money coming from? And, you should just sell it and let somebody do something good in it or whatever, that if we can just put a narrative out there that.
More than a vision, it's actually this information that Keziah has, and you go out and collect and say, well, you could do this and this is what it would look like. That would be helpful, I think.
Yeah.
So Camilla, I totally understand the bandwidth thing, and I feel like it would be really great for the planning commission to be able to sink our teeth into the affordable housing potentials of the town garage site as you're working on the town garage side of things. I like me on a personal level, I've struggled with the concept of like how do I don't want to personally make decisions on behalf of an entire township
Mm-hmm.
because
can't.
of the varying conflicting opinions, right? So now that's why I'm getting in this sort of like computer brain mindset of like trying to understand the systematic approach to things so that you can provide what's needed for the town, but not through a single voice, right?
Yeah.
So it sounds like it's a back and forth of like you're playing catch.
Mhm.
So like I have the ball now and I'm moving it down the field
Mhm.
and now I pitch it
Mhm.
to get some feedback
Mhm.
from the rest of the team and then it gets
Yeah,
back.
then you get that feedback, you process that, apply it however you can, and then again, reflect back to the community how their feedback was implemented. Really a very important part that gets skipped a lot.
Yeah.
And leads to the.
So we got the feedback and we're still trucking on in this direction. Yeah.
So,
And I think-
'cause- oh,
Sorry.
yeah, Camilla, you can go ahead.
Go ahead, Camilla.
And I think what we, the planning commission and select board, the town needs to figure out is the back and forth, tossing the ball back and forth between our two bodies. So you guys are doing great research information right now. It feels to me like when you've gathered enough, then you come to the select board and we talk about, okay, here's where we are. You pitch what you'd like to take forward and figure out what is appropriate for the select board to steer and what the planning commission is going to do so that we're not working against each other. We're tag teaming this to move it forward. And I don't, I'm sitting here in this meeting, but other than that, we haven't had a lot of collective brain time around this subject. And I think that's something we'll need to do.
Camilla, that makes a lot of sense to me. Just one question along that, as someone who's like really excited about housing there, and I think clearly against highest bidder, are there other like areas that you think the planning commission should explore that would benefit the town that aren't housing? I just kind of want to throw that out there as just for consideration as we're thinking about it. Like, are there other civic ways to benefit the community other than housing we should consider?
On that piece of property, you mean development for that property?
Or if you've ever heard interesting ideas, I just feel like it's worth a step over the next few weeks as we're talking about the garage in this phase. But to me, housing you just keep coming back to it. So I just wanted to ask.
I think I would agree with what, basically your feelings. When we put together the speaking points for town meeting, I listed a couple of different scenarios because I didn't want to indicate that, yep, we're doing housing here. The community hasn't decided that. So, more parking or, a community center, activities, whatever, civic center kind of thing. Those are some ideas that came up, but it really feels like, and I don't think it's just perception, that most of the community would like to see housing there. So I think we're on the same page with that. There are other ideas, and I think we have to be open to those other ideas. So a charrette or something might offer those ideas. We don't have to be completely focused on, but I think that's what's going to come to the top, is my guess.
Something that Plainfield just did a housing charrette in their community over a potential piece of land, and they had a table that was for other ideas. So there were a bunch of tables working on housing, what this look like, and then there was a table for people who were mad about the idea of housing or who thought Plainfield needed something else. Mm-hmm. And they kind of worked through those and still collected that. So that was a part of the feedback. That was a really nice way to say, look,
that's
we're
how
not
this whole
closed
idea
off.
came up.
Right.
We're not pushing this down your throat.
Garage came from a charrette on the municipal area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
Is that regarding the Goddard campus?
No, it's actually another piece of land. But yeah.
So, what I wanted to point out, which you may have already heard about, is Jim Sanford led a charrette for that property. So we have
nice.
Visuals. I think you have powerful visuals. So to the extent Macon wants to, show that work has already been done, we certainly can. Like, you have a drawn out, we see this many units here. Like, you have something that is visually
Are you sure about that?
Yes, yeah. you-
It had like 8 or 10, there was something that had.
I remember.
Yeah, it's
I
something
remember
that is
12 being
worthwhile.
I know, but that was done,
In 2006.
yeah,
Sure, but
so
it-
quite a long time ago. And I think all of our thinking about housing and especially in Warren Village
Mm.
has evolved
Mm.
way beyond what,
Yeah,
those were individual lots. Those were individual 1/8 acre, quarter-acre
Yeah.
lots. We're thinking about some significant, at least I'm thinking of significant density there.
Mhm.
Where where it could be one building with 20 units and there's maybe, maybe that's extreme.
Yeah,
But it could be some multifamily
Yeah.
places down there.
Townhomes,
And
shared
loosely
homes,
attached and
Yeah.
maybe dribbling off to a single at the end, something like that. But, I mean, it would take us, the planning commission, an hour and a half to sketch out some ideas.
And,
Yeah, okay.
you know, I
you
I
need
would say that-
capacity first. You need to know how many wells you can put in there, like what the connection capacity is. I think you have to start with some parameters. It's not just about sketching it or like how much density you want.
Right.
I think that you do need to start with the factual basis of what the land can support.
How much can it handle, yeah?
But I mean, one question I have for Macon, though, the story that you want of, let's connect the bond vote to a definite of what's gonna happen with this land. Let's have the select board covenant, file something in the land records, like, if this bond passes, this land will never be used for STRs. I think that's confusing, and I don't think you could even get to that step, but Macon, like, I'm open to this, and I think this is gonna be a continuing conversation.
well, what you just described really appealed to my heart. I did not suggest that. I'm here for it. Okay.
Yeah.
But to me, it's like, if the select board decides, or the town, I guess, decides it's serious about using housing at the town garage site, no matter what, it could put a covenant on it or could start the process tomorrow. Right. So that's a process. I'm not saying it should. I was just pointing out covenants are a tool that I think it came up in the conversation. But what I'm saying generally, and this is my last piece on this, Jim, you said something earlier about how the bond vote, like, it's just hard to see why anybody would vote against it. Like, it's not hard for me to see. Our schools are getting cut, right? I totally get the garage needs to move, and I know I've heard it all. But I think when we're trying to raise money from the community, the more we can have aspects of the project that appeal, the better. And if people believe that what's happening because the bond vote passes is that we're able to build a new garage and unlock housing there, that's a lot more attractive to people and a broader group. And I'm not saying it needs to be written in stone and we all need to spit and shake on it. What I'm saying is as we think about the bond communications and the bond strategy, the future use of the town garage parcel, no matter what you think, is going to be what a lot of bond voters are interested in. And I'm really eager to fill that void. So I really appreciate this conversation, though.
And I think, you can express your intent. You can express your intent to do housing, right? And to say who we hope this housing will for, but you can also trust your community. You don't, in my opinion, you don't have to be so definite in terms of we're going to pass these covenants and XYZ. I think that if you do engagement, you can trust that the best use for this property is going to come forward through the majority voice. And so it's actually really helpful to put it out there and to listen to people, because then you can also say back to them, if they're all pissed off at a meeting, this came from you. And so I don't know exactly what your community needs to feel comfortable in passing something like a bond vote. Some communities really want the nitty-gritty detail and they want to hear about every dollar. And some communities are comfortable with a narrative, a process, meeting dates, ways to give their engagement and what your intent is. So I think that's another thing that you sort of have to decide is how much do we need to figure out ahead of time? What do we need to put out there? But it is a really important conversation.
Yeah.
How do you engage with and communicate with those who want to be here but have yet to find a way of how to get here and stay here?
Within the community
Like
or?
there's those who live in town and
Yeah.
those who want to live in Warren but can't because of affordable housing crisis or cost of living or work.
Don't forget the
Yeah.
ones that are about to move out.
Yeah, I think that's a decision that you make around your engagement is who are we talking to? So is it gonna be just for Warren residents? Are we going to host special conversations and send it out to people who are interested? Are we inviting people who are interested? So if you really want that opinion, then that's something that you'll build into your plan for engaging community.
So it's also to people just being gun ho about reaching out to.
Yeah,
Well, I think that's where you need to go to the private sector. You need to go to Sugar Bush and talk to the people when they come off of work. Or you
Yeah.
need to go to a Roots Builder site and say, hey, guys, how many of you here are commuting over 30 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay, I mean,
Or have a Warren wind down.
that's where you're gonna
That's
get,
exactly
that's where you're gonna talk to those
It's gonna be a
people.
charrette now. It's just gonna be a wind down charrette.
No, but I am imagining we should have a
Square down.
table at the wind down that's like, we wanna hear from you. And then have like signs that catch people's attention
Yes.
and maybe some of us can table there and that could be
Yeah,
kind of.
and you can have things like a contact list and say you want to stay up to date on this project.
Put down your email and we'll
then
send you
when
updates, yeah.
need people to come and volunteer or support the effort or put information out there. Those are your people who are getting the correct information out there.
Yeah, that's
So-
a really good idea. I mean, part of it can be discussion, but also like sign up to stay informed on this project. Yeah, thinking that we should add that into the wind down.
Yeah, but yeah, to speak to that, going to where people are is huge because not everyone can show up. And then one last thing I will say, because I have to get home and say goodnight to my girls, or they'll be angry at me all day tomorrow, is that, oh goodness, just left my head. Ugh, I shouldn't have done that.
Don't worry. Email us
Oh,
when it comes back. So just before you run,
We'll save a unit for you.
our next step, should that be talk to Downstreet, talk to Sugar, whoever, or should it be community forum?
I don't think you have to do them exclusively.
Do both.
I think you can
Okay.
reach out. This is all part of your exploration, right? You're
Okay.
figuring out what can happen, and then you're also figuring out what people want to see happen.
Okay,
Excellent.
piggybacking on that, Dan, so when do we have to contact an engineer though? When do we need to know what capacity that land holds?
That's a,
Just guess.
well, I might reach out to John because all of this stuff costs money, right? I don't
Yeah.
know what your budget is.
Have we done any,
or-
has the town ever looked at the, like
Yeah.
drilling wells there? Jim?
Potentially.
No?
What's that?
Have you ever looked at drilling wells there? How much, what water capacity is
Have
there?
I ever looked at a drilling, or no, I'm not a well driller.
Well, no, I mean, the charrette, like, it seems like you've talked about this project for 20 years. I
Yeah.
wouldn't be surprised if you said, oh, we already did that.
No, we haven't, I don't think we've done that yet.
I think there is a well there that supplies the
Current garage.
the town garage.
Mm.
And I don't know what the capacity of that well is.
Yeah.
There's a couple of subterranean tanks there which need to be pulled out. And of course, the buildings need to be demolished.
Yeah.
But my sense of it is that there's some significant room there for dense housing.
And do you know what the town has for wastewater hookups available?
I'm pretty sure they can handle that.
Yeah, that's something
Like
you can
20
find out
minutes.
more easily,
Can
just
almost shake your
understanding
head, yeah,
capacity.
so
Yeah,
Yeah.
Because I do
we
not
definitely
want
have
my dogs
capacity.
to be angry.
Camilla, you
you
have
so
an
much.
idea of that?
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you guys. It was
appreciate
a really fun conversation.
Yeah, thank you.
And-
So much,
and,
and maybe
yeah.
we'll get you back again soon.
Yeah,
Yes.
that would be great.
I'd love to
Um,
have
What if you
back
wanted
in
to
And
another-
I'm always available to email. June is a nuts time for me,
Yeah.
so I might take a
We
week or
should go
two,
to
but
at least
I-
I will.
absolutely.
well,
Yeah.
like-
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank
Christina.
you.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, I think there's a well tag I could probably look it up.
Okay, that was agenda item number 4, housing conversation with Keziah Haviland. Number 5, Dan Riker and Britton Rogers have kindly agreed to join us to talk about a possible community project. You guys feel comfortable pulling up a chair? You're
Move it forward, I guess.
Yeah, you got to move over here.
Chairs.
So, just by, well, I'll have you guys introduce yourselves. I think probably everybody knows you, but if not, just by way of background, you know, the possible community project has come up and a couple of folks on the planning commission have mentioned it or said they heard about it. So I thought if you, whatever you're willing or able to share and
Yep.
comfortable sharing
Yep.
about what's going on, we'd love to hear. But if you maybe just introduce yourselves first.
Sure, I'm Britton Rogers, I'm a Warren resident, and I am the executive director of Yes Tomorrow Glenville School.
And I'm Dan Riker, a Warren resident, East Warren, and do a variety of things in the energy and climate area.
And he's a Yes Tomorrow board member.
And a Yes Tomorrow board member. And we're here to talk about the 4-acre parcel immediately across the road from the East Warren Community Market, which was put back on the market a while ago, came off the market, and we decided it was time to see what the sellers were really interested in and whether, frankly, rather than a large house getting built there, was there a community-oriented purpose that that land could serve. And we're here to report on the efforts to purchase the land. And it really is in many ways an important gateway, we think, to the Mad River Valley. We call this, for lack of a better name, the Four Corners Project. And our objective is to achieve a community-oriented use of the property as a result of something that was a real breakthrough with the sellers, which was their agreement to go through a bargain sale, meaning what they were asking for the property, they were willing to lower it substantially and enjoy the tax benefit that is the difference between what they were asking and this below market rate. And so with that agreement, informal agreement with the sellers, we went ahead and have raised money from a large number of donors. The buyer would be Yes Tomorrow. The sellers, through a bargain sale, would transfer that property.
Yes Tomorrow is a 501c3, is that the idea?
Yeah.
What is the tax benefit that they get?
So there's two benefits. With respect to the seller, the difference in price between the appraised value and they have a very recent appraisal, and what they sell the property for is considered a donation
Oh, right.
to the 501c3. And then what we've been able to do, and we're very close right now, is find a group of donors willing to purchase the property at that bargain sale price through gifts to Yes Tomorrow.
Oh, that's great. Brilliant.
And the hope is that we're gonna be able to reach a closing between the sellers at the bargain rate and Yes Tomorrow this summer. And essentially, at that point, having bought the property, Yes Tomorrow will undertake a process through community workshops to figure out the use of the property. We come here tonight with no specific use in mind, and we've been very careful, to be honest, in not specifying the use. But we've also been very clear that this is going to be a process that Yes Tomorrow will run through informal community workshops, and most importantly, as much interaction as we can have with the town of Warren as far as what might happen with that property. And we really appreciate the opportunity this evening to get some advice from you. We're not, and I want to just emphasize it, we're not in a position to specify uses. With that, we have a few questions to ask you, but why don't you go first? Anything you want to add?
No, you captured it well done. Yeah.
Good.
Thanks.
So we appreciate your questions, and then, as I say, we have a few for you.
So if one of the four corners is East Warren Market,
Yeah,
then it's this one.
Yes.
Correct.
correct.
So Ruby Blair property.
The northeast corner.
Yeah, so you walk out the front door of the East Warren Market and you walk directly across the road.
Does it go, it doesn't go to the
What a
cemetery, right?
gateway.
There's farmland in between.
Yeah, there's an 8 acre parcel in between, and there is, correct me if I'm wrong, the 4 acre parcel enjoys an easement onto that additional for septic. And it was on that basis that the current owners were able to get agreement for a septic system for a quite a
So
large
the 4
house.
acres doesn't have to have the septic on it.
I don't know that. What I do know is that the sellers were able to get an easement on an adjacent property. It may not have, I don't know the details.
I see.
That property was originally owned by Roberta Elliott,
Yeah,
and she did get a wastewater system design done by McCain.
Yeah, Roberta Elliott, that's, I said Ruby Blair.
Yeah, that's okay. And,
That's this.
and what her vision was, which obviously didn't happen, but she was hoping at the time to do 2 duplexes. And there was the wastewater capacity
Right.
to have 2 duplexes on that property. So the wastewater should not be an issue depending on whatever they do.
yeah, so wait, the sellers, and in conjunction with that,
Depends, if they do a natatorium there, they might need a bigger thing.
Yeah, I don't know, but I'm just saying that, you know, it's,
I mean, first of all, I think just thank you. I mean, I think that what a great, you know, what a great thing to organize, and what a, you know, it is a really gateway, you know, kind of a great gateway location. So I think I don't know that I have any advice, but just kind of thank you for pulling together that. And I don't know, maybe other people have advice or questions.
Jim, haven't we thought of that as kind of an additional village area of sorts?
That was
Over the
a
years?
crossroads hamlet, I believe is the word we used for it.
you mean was as in the late 1800s when there were houses and barns and all of that?
No,
Oh,
in the previous town plan.
I see.
One of the models of development was along with Upland Enclave,
That was yours.
was a crossroads hamlet. And that's a crossroads with a bunch of stuff happening around it. You know, it's a great site for doing something, and for doing something that supports the already burgeoning sort of common stuff going on there.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think Roots Work specifically is that active, but certainly the East Warren Community Market is a great feature. And I don't know why they can't get the bus to go into that thing and drop people off, but anything that can increase the critical mass at that junction is a really great, you know, is a real positive. Somebody could go there and walk across the street to a, I don't know, coffee shop or I don't, you know, whatever it is. I'm not positive, or I've never thought that it should be all housing. You know, it seems like there should be something else there, you know,
A mixed use of some
yeah,
sort?
mixed use or something like that. That just feels, if it's all housing, that doesn't, I don't know, it didn't feel right somehow.
Mhm.
But maybe that's what you end up with.
You can move the post office there.
No, we're gonna take their photograph signed in.
Are there any questions for Dan and Britton?
How
Or
many
should we?
how many acres is the property?
It's 4 acres.
It's 4 acres.
And there is, you know,
Is it,
No, it's boxy-ish.
it's boxy, okay. Okay,
And I suggested in a conversation I had with Dan, to look at all the potential uses that we have in the new regs coming up as far as what's permitted and what's conditional, just for inspiration, just because he had called me from a zoning standpoint, and I pointed him to
Yeah.
that as far as using that as a jumping off point at least.
And I guess you had alluded to, and I guess I'd like to offer, I mean, I'm assuming that parts of the vision may line up, parts of your vision, there's no guarantee, but if it lines up with, you know, the town's vision, perhaps we could try to help you or support your project in some way. I don't know, I just kind of wanted to reach out and say, maybe there's something we could help. I don't know what that is, it's very nebulous, but.
Well, let me give you a couple things we've talked about. Brittany and I kicked one idea around. Obviously, the town owns the property across the road. Town owns the schoolhouse where the East Warren Market is. You know, so we are, in a sense, the butters. And so we could, you know, I think, first of all, we'd like your advice from the perspective of zoning, planning, and all of that. But I think as an adjacent landowner, owning a very important building there that has a variety of uses, you know, we'd like some interaction in that way as we go out and explore potential uses of this new property.
Well, I think what's really nice is the fact that you all are here with Keziah being here, because I think a lot of what she shared with us
Yeah.
as far as what the town is looking to do, you can take a lot of that as far as how your thinking is as to what you want to do. And I think having the outreach and finding out what the community wants, if you truly want it to be a community project, and getting the same sort of things that we're going to be doing as far as the town garage site. But if you use some of those same things that she just outlined for us,
Yeah.
that would be really helpful to you.
I have a question. So do you look for it to be a busy place? I mean, is that the goal? Who know, I don't want to define busy. I mean,
Yeah, define
would it be
busy.
okay, that you've got 14 people there every day, and on the weekends there are 28. Call that busy.
Okay.
Unbusy would be, yeah, every other day, 2 people show up and tend to something. I mean, how busy do we think?
So part of, I think, what Yestermar will do is ask questions like this as we explore potential uses.
Okay.
And that's a great question. You know, and that gets you immediately into the variety of uses that you might put the property to. You know, some people have asked the question, the East Warren Community Market
Is already super busy, right?
Right.
I mean, there's
and running out of space.
There's
apparently.
hundreds of people that go there every day, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so
Oh, yeah,
now you
space in
got,
terms of parking space?
Retail space, parking space, baking space, I don't know.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah, I mean, it's
Yeah.
what, 550 square feet? I've
Well,
asked,
yeah. Well, they also need employees. They said they would bake more if they had more employees, so how is it?
And they don't have employees because there's nowhere for them to live.
Yes,
So,
yeah. Yes.
Snake
Cat
oil.
chasing
More
its tail
activity
across
out there.
yeah, there's a whole set of issues that I don't think would be that
Yeah,
difficult
they
to
could get out from
explore.
underneath roofs.
They would be thrilled. Oh, never, did I say that?
Oh.
So we don't, what we're
We
careful
don't want
about.
to talk about the car, I was like,
yeah,
oh,
no,
parking,
I'm
that's all.
not trying to, I'm
You're not
just-
trying
I'm
to
just
design
curious.
anything
Yeah.
until there's the full community engagement.
Well, first we gotta buy the property.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
First,
Start
we have to
there.
buy the property, and then second, we have to think about, first and foremost, yes, tomorrow's a school. And so this needs, for us to be involved with it, it needs to fulfill our mission and be about education for our students. And there are just many ways that I think it can be that. It can serve our own students in the way of design projects and, you know, floating ideas out there to suggest to the community. But then also, I think it's a really good laboratory for us to study and teach people about community development. So use the working with the town of Warren as a place for other people to learn from how a community can come together, work toward a sustainable solution. So, you know, we're looking at it from that perspective also, not just from we must do something immediately and engage the town. We want to look at it really carefully and think about it educationally as well as community-based and sustainably. And so.
May not want to answer this, but you must have thought about some ideas about what you think could be there.
I have.
Okay. You don't want to answer.
He just answered.
Yes.
Well, we have
Sustainability, community, accessory,
we
you
have
know.
permaculture classes that love to think about agricultural use. We
Okay.
have timber framing classes that love to think about pavilions to be used for a variety of things, whether a farm stand or something else. We have we build tiny houses and shipping containers and other modular buildings for housing. So, you know, we have thought of those things because those are the things we think about every day for the school.
And there would be those would be in this exploratory phase, and there'd be other things in this exploratory phase. You know, we'd really want to assess the broad range of possibilities for that site. And, you know, people have suggested a community center. People have suggested, you know, as we've heard, a couple of duplexes. People have suggested a pavilion. There've been, you know, informal.
People suggested an orchard and keeping it agricultural,
Right.
or making sure that it stays agricultural. So,
And the first step, the one thing we're sure about is we need to go and clean up the site. You know,
Is that concrete block line still there?
Yes.
Come on.
Is that on the site?
Yeah, it's still there.
Is it still there?
Yes.
It's colorful.
It's
just a pile of blocks now.
Whatever it is, that needs to be cleaned up.
Graffiti canvas.
Yeah.
Because
Is there anything left of the house?
There's
Any-
gotta be tons of
I
metal.
mean, aside from the lilacs.
Probably some
There's
stuff in
tons of metal up
piles of
there.
Yeah.
things,
Yeah, so we've got to get in, we've got to clean that up. That's the definite. And then, you know, people have said, well, you know, when you're cleaning it up, put in a garden or, you know, plant some trees or whatever. So that's step one when we buy the property.
Yeah.
Beyond that, it's really got to be an open process.
Wow, that's a great opportunity, I think.
It's a great
I think that's
opportunity.
super cool.
Yeah, I am curious though. I mean, you have, as you said, you have a group of donors who, and then there's the broader community and, well, as a colleague of mine once said, everyone has opinions of like armpits, everyone has them and most of them stink. So I may have said another orifice. I don't remember, but I mean, on the one hand, you know, you have the interests and the visions of your donors. There's the broader community, you know, town. I mean, leadership for what, you know, but I think we're really respond to the broader community. We're not. So how do, like, what's
Probably an amusement park. We haven't talked about that.
an amusement park?
Yeah, just tree houses, just all tree
So
houses.
I guess I'm wondering
A
how.
ropes course.
Sorry, I hadn't said it.
Yeah, I just don't, I mean, I don't really have an opinion. I mean, so in other words, I really don't have an opinion to offer. Other folks, maybe Jim and Adam have more thoughts. I'm really grateful, basically, that you came in. I'm really excited to hear about the project. And you know, although it's very nebulous in my mind, how the town can support it.
Well, we'd like to learn more about those possibilities. You don't have them off the top of your head. But as I said, first and foremost, what would various projects on that site face in terms of zoning and planning and all that? That's straightforward, and we can have that conversation.
Yeah.
Secondly, again, the adjoining property that the town owns, not just the land, but the schoolhouse. And, you know, there are uses there. And, you know, as we think about, as this exploratory process thinks about uses of the adjacent property, how do we think about that interaction? You know, there's the adjacent acreage that has the, you know, that has the septic easement, and who knows what might happen there. There are the two corners that are in agriculture. An easement, I think, on one of them, conservation easement on one of them. So we want to think, it's one of the reasons we call it the four corners. We really want to think about the four corners of that property and what's realistic. The good news is the donors have been very excited about this. And it's a good number of donors who said, yeah, that's a really pivotal piece of property. And, you know, we ought to find something smart to do with it from the perspective of Warren and the broader Mad River Valley. You know, you come down that hill and there it is.
And you know, Jenny's right on the corner, right? Did you know that?
Oh, yeah.
One of
Okay.
the four
All
corners.
right.
And
She's right across the street from the big pile of rubber tires.
Yeah. Got a good deal
so
on that.
we will invite you to the opening meeting.
Oh, I'm sure, yeah.
I'm
The
What
theme
about
park.
like
saying
a
that in jest,
farm
of course
school?
you'll be involved. What's that?
I'm thinking like a farm school, So you have animals, but then there's also education around taking care of the animals, and then there's some housing for people who work at the school, maybe some other people.
Missy's been looking for a location for her Vermont Farm and Forest School. That's in
Oh, really?
Roxbury, apparently.
Oh, that would be nice.
Looking to get it out of the backyard.
Oh, we're offering suggestions. Well, what about a firing range?
Whoa, Now we're talking. Now we're talking.
Firing range, brewery.
Even though it's.
Axe throwing.
Now, anyway, any last questions?
Well, we have one.
Yeah, oh, please.
What's the smart way to do community engagement on this that Yes Tomorrow, will help facilitate?
You could table at our event.
Yeah.
Well, that,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then you can have
But
your
I
own
didn't know-
charrette.
Yes.
We're
You have a
planning
big
a
picnic out
wine
there.
event.
Seriously,
Um,
get people to go to the site.
Hold on,
I
Jim.
mean, get them out there and
And
have
food.
like a
That's a
big
great-
tent or
that's a
something
great
like that.
idea.
And have an event there that brings people
Yeah, or have
in
your own
and
event.
food
No
and
one
stuff
owns
like
the
that.
property yet, though. Can we just squat on, have a squatting picnic on?
We're planning a
on-
wine
So
event.
once you
No,
own-
we'll own it this
Okay,
summer.
well then, yeah, okay, well then there we go.
In the meantime, it sounds like Michelle is
Yeah.
planning a wind down event.
Yeah, we've actually picked a date, which this is on our agenda anyways, but we're looking at August 20th. It's a Wednesday evening. It's gonna be kind of ripping off of a roundup style event. We'll have some food
Square down.
vendors. Yeah, Warren Wine Down is the
Is
tentative
it
name.
WINE? I've never heard of that.
Wind,
wine.
I was thinking
WYND.
WIND, like wind down.
Oh, not WINE. I thought it was a play on words.
Instead of round up,
There will
wind
be
down.
alcohol for
They do
sale.
the
but it's
roundup
not gonna
down
be
there, so we
central.
were thinking of the square down here, but wind
Or
down.
the Warren wind down, you get the alliteration.
Oh, I
and
get it
it's
now,
so-
round and square.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
talking-
But so it's gonna be on the green by the pavilion.
August
we're gonna-
20th?
Yeah.
August 20th.
um,
Back
like-
to school time.
And it's a sort of a
Everyone will be
charrette
excited.
or it's a,
It's supposed to be just
Just
a
a
community
community
gathering, food trucks, music, just bring people together specifically in Warren. The goal would be to potentially make it a reoccurring thing. We're gonna start with the August date and then maybe get another one in September. if all
Out
goes
here, right?
well. Yep,
So-
right
Yeah,
out
with our new
here.
pavilion.
Celebrate the pavilion, the town green, revitalize the village a little bit, get a little bit of.
Yeah, but if you guys wanted to table there, I think
Mhm.
we'd have plenty of space if people
Yeah.
wanna do some tabling.
Make some space.
Yeah,
So
I think that's a
And
great
get like
idea.
even a survey thing if you. have
Another,
some handout.
wait,
People want
well,
to-
hold on.
Like
Another
you have a
idea-
stand for your.
Another
cause
idea is we had, in addition to that, and perhaps before that, I think Jim and Adam had great attendance at a town
Yeah,
visioning
attended it.
exercise.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
we did.
it
That was
seems to
awesome.
me that if you're open to that and interested in community feedback, we could certainly co-sponsor a visioning, and we would happily
that's a great idea.
co-sponsor a visioning exercise from the Four Corners Project and the Warren PC are sponsoring a
So-
visioning exercise.
And do
Well,
it,
we
do it
can
on
also
their,
have
on their
in mind
property.
Okay,
as a
perfect.
model.
Do it on
So,
their
so Dan,
property.
will we
sure.
include what our vision is for the building, the town building that we have up there? I mean, are we always gonna just rent it to,
Oh, you mean, the school, I don't, well,
so that's
I don't
my
think-
question, is do we have a vision for?
I don't
what we're
think we
gonna
have
do
a
with that
vision
one?
for and really
No.
that's.
Should we?
We should.
If we could turn it back into a school.
But this is what a visioning, this is what a
Put the
visioning.
market
exercise
price
is.
right.
Yes.
Talk about it tomorrow night.
And this is what a visioning exercise could do for us.
Right. What we're gonna
What
do.
would people like to see?
Well, just.
Be fun to do them as a joint.
Yeah, let's do
Joint
this, yeah.
discussion.
If you're open to that.
I think that would be great. And I think if you decide you want to pull the vision for the school.
I think we gotta call it it's the Four Corners, so
Four
we ought
corners
to be,
vision.
we ought to be also
Looking at the.
expand it into, okay, how do we?
Yeah, I think it's just like we talked about in the past agenda topic, you have it nailed down with funding and zoning and wastewater. What we can provide is a platform, right?
Right.
So one of the platforms being the wind down, another one being the on-site picnic, charrette, just let us know what we can
Yeah,
do
you
to
guys
help
build a
spread
new
the
store
word.
and then we can turn
and
that
get more
place back into the
engagement.
school.
I mean, we struggle with engagement too, so anything we can work together on in terms of engagement.
Well, I think we could do
Yes.
another event, like like the Four Corners visioning. Like,
Right.
how long would that take? We could do that within Like, what would that take? You
But
know,
these guys should do that.
No, well, no, the idea, I think,
we're
Yeah.
we're talking
we
about
partner
partnering.
and do it together.
Yeah.
And if you wanna throw this
Strengthen
future
numbers.
of the schoolhouse.
Definitely,
That,
it's gotta be
you have
everything.
to.
Yeah,
You
I
have to.
agree.
Gotta
That
be
would
both
be, that,
ways.
I think that would attract a lot of people.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
we don't have to, like, I don't have a perspective, but I'm curious, but this is the opportunity for people to share it. And if people have an idea
Mhm.
that wouldn't it be better to have a bigger, better building, somewhere else? Well, okay, great. That just goes on the list of ideas, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, whatever that wonderful event was and the green in front of East Warren Market last summer, that could be similar style to that, you know, just kind of everyone hanging out on the
Is
grass.
it the East Warren Markets here?
So, Jen, do you own-
Oh, yeah, it was like an anniversary party or something.
Anniversary party.
You know,
What
that
about the
big
one you
green-
did, Adam? You and Jim ran a great program.
Yeah, that was here.
That was here and it was
Yeah.
great.
I really enjoyed it. I thought it was
Yeah,
really
That's,
Your
that's,
house, then the.
that's
then-
the advantage of
this
doing
big
it
green
site
spot.
specifically.
Right.
You know, if
Walk
you do it
around
on
together,
the site, then
and
people
this is the
want,
parking
wait a
lot.
minute, we got
Yeah,
this,
people
look over
somewhere.
there, you
Oh,
know.
I
Visualize.
I think that's
That's
exciting.
Okay.
That's part of a tent or.
Carol's
Yeah.
Carol's not catching everything because too many people
Okay, too many
talking
side
about-
conversations.
So this is kind of.
Right.
All right, too many side conversations.
Yeah.
Anything else we can do for you besides working on that
I
idea?
think so. I looked, and
I have
all
a
our
survey
questions
site.
we
I'll
came up
keep
were
that.
answered, so I think we're
Oh,
good.
okay.
So we'll get
I
through
was
our
just
closing and
curious
then
as to-
we'll,
Right.
Yeah.
we'll
Just-
reach back out.
Yeah.
If we're,
Absolutely.
if things go well, we'll close in July.
Yeah.
So.
Awesome, thank you for coming, thank you
Congratulations.
for
Thank you.
opening us to.
Thanks for the interest.
Sure, sure. Wonderful.
I love the idea of collaborating. So
Let's do
Yeah.
it.
Good,
Very
thank
good.
you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to item, thank you, Britton, thank you, Dan, thank you very,
Thank
very
you.
much, really appreciate it.
Good night.
Yep, good night. That brings us to newer other business.
Okay. STR status.
Yes, what is the STR status?
Just this last week, I had a conversation with Rebecca on it, and it is still with the LCT, expected to be done by the end of June.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep.
Community gathering, is there anything more you want to say about that? What's the date? It's
August
August
20th, so that's a Wednesday evening. We confirmed that there is definitely no Waitsfield Roundup.
Okay,
Yeah, there's
before we
nothing.
pick that date.
Specifically, we asked JB if there's any permits out for events, right, for any Wednesday events, and he said there's nothing, so.
Okay.
Shouldn't be any conflict with that.
Yeah.
what hours?
Start at 5 to 8-ish. I just put out a post on Front Porch seeking vendors, and through that, we've got one that's definitely wants to come, and that's Gracie's Tamales. She said she lives in Warren Village.
Yeah.
So she wants to come. And then we've got some specific vendors that we want to reach out to food wise.
Okay.
And then the plan is to just get an alcohol vendor with like a catering license,
Yeah.
and then probably just rope off the entire green and have that be there. Cause you know, you have to do a contained space for,
Yeah.
Do they do that at the roundup?
they do rope it off. It's kind of
It's
subtle,
just
but they
one
always
little
just
rope.
have a rope going across, and that's, I think, because of liquor laws.
Okay.
Just
So
at the
I think
mouth
if
of
we
the
just-
driveway.
If we
Okay.
just rope off the
Just one rope.
green, and then that's the alcohol area,
Mhm.
and, you know, maybe we
Okay.
have,
Well, you're gonna use obviously part of the parking lot for the food trucks and that kind of thing? Or are they all gonna be on the green with like
I mean,
tables and? a little-
ideally on the green, but if
with
we did
them.
have, like, if like Dino Bones wanna come and bring their large truck, then maybe they would need to be in the parking
Okay.
lot, and so, yeah, maybe we'd have to have like a table, like leave your beer here when you go get your
Right,
barbecue.
right.
We can figure
Well,
that
there's
stuff
that
out.
little paved strip in front of the pavilion. We can
Okay,
have
so
a
we can have a
couple
large- larger
stations
truck
Because the
there.
there.
pavilion's open to both sides,
Yeah.
so it's made so that you can have
Make
stuff
like a
out
little
here and
outdoor
in
room.
there. I
Yeah,
mean, maybe the food trucks are all out there, and that this is just a gathering spot.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You know, whatever.
Well, there is that walkway right in front of the building here
Yeah,
too,
yeah.
that might.
We
work.
can
yeah, they could
sketch
just
out a
park
little
along, kind
plan.
of getting the driveway over towards the library. Cause we might wanna think about leaving the parking lot open for parking.
Right.
But yeah, these are all important details.
How cool that you, so, how awesome.
We're gonna make it happen.
This is
Yeah.
great, this is, it
Yeah.
sounds like it's actually gonna happen, you've done a lot of work.
Yeah, and we
Fantastic.
talked with, who was it, Sam, who
Oh.
had some experience with events, and you know, he threw out the idea that we could look into asking for, you know, a small cut from the vendors to put into some kind of fund, whether it's to throw future events or maybe whether it's a housing fund. But he did say that that's not unusual to ask the vendors for, you know, like 5 to 10% of their sales. So that's something that we'd have to think about. I don't know if that's something that would go to the select board or not.
Yeah, and just like musicians, you know, how to get people to like play some music and get paid.
Yeah, like, do we
you
take
know,
that
stuff like
5% to
that,
pay a band,
Yeah,
maybe, and then,
like we have Brett Hughes potentially lined up. We have potentially Chickies band, one Chickies band's lined up.
Another food truck.
Got Yuko
guy.
Sushi lined up.
you did,
potentially.
okay.
Yeah, Sam
Holy moly.
spoke to some folks and yeah.
If you need
Things are
another band,
rolling.
let me know. I can get you another band.
A
Cool.
band, okay.
Alright,
Awesome. Yeah, so maybe we have like a few different bands each play for 40 bucks.
Who does beer at the roundup?
So that was Sweet Spot that was
Yeah,
doing
they
the
were
beer,
serving
because
that.
they have a liquor license.
Uh-huh.
So we're
So-
thinking about asking Hideaway, because
Yeah.
they have a catering alcohol license. If they would come and just sell alcohol.
Carol had a suggestion. Carol?
No, I don't have a suggestion. I just have a caution because the people who took over the Sweet Spot are planning on doing roundups this summer. And I'm
They
not
changed
sure
their
if it's Wednesdays. They changed their mind.
Yeah, they said they were
Okay.
gonna do it and then they backed out, and it looks like they're just not doing it this year, and that's why we checked on permits. 'Cause if
Yeah,
they
we
were gonna-
checked with the town of Waitsfield.
Right, because they did get a permit issued.
They do not have a permit.
Or
We
they canceled
specifically,
it.
we
Applied for
specifically
one,
asked
but-
the zoning administrator if they have a permit, and they do not.
Well, the permit was issued by the select. I would double check with York just to be sure.
Okay.
With
'Cause we
who?
need to-
With the town administrator, York.
The town
Paxton.
administrator probably, because.
we checked with JB Weir, so we thought that would be,
Well, but the thing is,
but it could be,
those.
He wouldn't
that-
have issued, he didn't issue the permit.
okay.
Well, that would
What's
just be
his
a
name?
matter of shifting one day,
Yeah.
but I
We'll work it
am
out.
pretty sure that
Yeah.
they bailed on doing roundup.
York or
Yeah.
Warwick?
Which I think is why there's so much excitement for this, because there is this void of outdoor.
Have you talked to
events.
Mike Flanagan?
No, is that like Michael's?
Michael?
Yeah, he
Michael's
was,
good to go?
yeah, they were on my list. I was
Yeah.
gonna just
You
contact
definitely
Sam
talk to
Siegel,
him.
because I
I
think
mean,
he
he's
works
a
there.
Warren guy.
I
Yeah,
haven't seen
okay.
him driving his truck, so I was wondering if he's still
Yeah.
food this year.
Well, anyways, our
Yeah,
next
but check
planning
with him,
meeting
absolutely.
is Juneteenth, so if anyone else
Oh,
would
it
like
is?
to
Okay.
come join
Yeah, make an express interest in
To
wanting to, he
keep
wasn't here when we formed the
discussing
subcommittee.
things.
Can you say who got back to you for interest? You said Gracie's Tamales.
Gracie's Tamales, and then, and she said, you know, she definitely wants to do it. One other person emailed me, but I don't know what their food company is. It was just her name was Sharon Dube, and I
Oh,
don't know.
Sharon Dubay.
Okay,
I know Sharon.
so she
Dubay.
contacted me, I gave her a call, we never connected, but she
Yeah,
expressed.
she's experienced in food.
Yeah, she
service.
does, she occasionally does baking up at East Warren Community Market.
Okay, so maybe we can
Oh,
keep
she
trying to
did,
connect with her.
at the opening at the Big Pick, I think she did panini. So
Okay.
maybe she'll be doing.
But yeah,
paninis.
Michael's was an idea, Wildflower Sushi, which I think is
Yeah.
underway. I've also thought Dino Bones, but haven't contacted them.
Did you ask Hideaway if they wanted to?
No, haven't
Does
contacted them.
Lawson do that kind of thing?
I don't know, I was wondering about that,
They
like if
have
they
done
have
it
the
at
right
the resort,
license.
but I don't know if that's
Oh, yeah.
because they're under like, you know,
Sugar Bushes.
whatever pub of Altera
Oh,
or Sugar,
yeah.
whatever.
Yeah,
Cause if they don't do catering, they may not have a liquor license that they
They
can
might
take.
do it under the like.
if Hideaway says no, I would definitely contact them next.
Well, super excited.
Yeah.
Just jazz, keep it with us.
Oh,
It's
does
gonna
anyone, wait, who did you want to do for music?
I mean, I was talking to Josh Morris, who has the band
Oh,
where
yeah.
they running in circles,
Oh,
which
Josh,
I don't know
yes.
if they can come.
He
to our
also
square
does
down.
food. He had a food truck up at the.
They
mountain
played
a
at
couple
Jazz
years
Fest
ago.
apparently. I missed their set.
Oh,
Josh.
that was Sabu Yuma,
Oh, okay.
different one of his band. his band.
Sabu Yuma?
Yeah, also a Josh Morris band.
And if Madigan, who does acoustic, if
Yeah,
he or
we mentioned
she's
her.
if she's
Yeah,
available,
I
you
know
tell
her and
me.
her mom and dad.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it sounds like we've got access to a few different band
Who are her
options, so.
parents?
Flatbread, would they? do
Well, she's on
something
Front Porch
like
Forum, so
So
we can find her.
Flatbread,
Yeah, and I-
oh,
I
as far as
can-
food?
Yeah,
They,
Oh, yeah.
they live.
I don't know, if, do they have a mobile oven? They
yeah,
must, yeah,
definitely.
yeah, because they do the
And they might
forest.
do-
Yeah, they do,
They
yeah,
could
they
do
do
the
have
I mean,
beer,
a-
too.
I'm,
they have an oven on wheels.
it just, it seems like there's an opportunity to get Warren people.
Warren
You know,
specific,
to do it. And I'm guessing if you asked, if you said to George
George would
Willis,
get some.
hey, what would you think about doing that? They do that in a nanosecond.
Mm.
yeah,
I think.
okay, I could ask Willis,
Yeah.
I would,
Yes.
I would ask them.
and they might have the catering liquor license.
They do, because they've catered stuff in their green in the, oh no, but that was on their
That's their
site.
top,
It's
yeah.
on their site.
Okay.
Well,
Alright.
we'll figure it out. We'll keep working on it.
Awesome,
You
awesome.
can
And what
delegate.
you do
Let
need
me
to do is you
contact
do need to go to the select board for an event thing, because you don't know how many you're gonna
Yes.
get, and
We gotta get
if
it
it
done.
comes anywhere near.
We're still in the
close to-
feasibility phase.
Oh,
Good.
good.
I mean, I think we should just go get the permit.
Yeah,
So do we need to, will they tell us how to handle the alcohol area? Like, will they, if we say we're out
I don't
there,
know,
what
they
area?
You know,
and the
They-
caterer might have some
Collaborate.
involvement on how to handle that too.
Yeah, yeah.
I remember
That's-
Pitcher Inn did a thing where they came to the select board and then they could like
Mhm.
just kind of organize the plan with the select board of how that would pan out. So it's kind of specific to the
The
event.
select board will wanna know, may give a cutoff time, things like that, and, you need to talk about parking and see if people are willing to walk down maybe the elementary school, depending on how many people will
Yeah,
come.
we did talk about that.
Because you've just gotta make sure that if people park on Main Street or any of the other, Flatiron or whatever, that emergency vehicles can go through.
Right.
Because we do have limited parking here. And if people are down parking in front of Alice Cheney's or up along Fuller Hill, you've
Mm.
gotta be aware of the fact that people may not be happy with it, but, so.
It sounds great.
And I
Yes,
did
Carol?
just, I did just go back to the Waitsfield minutes where that permit was, the event permit was approved. And they were supposed to start on May 21st, and I haven't noticed that they've been doing anything, so.
No,
It's
they
probably
announced
correct
that
that
they weren't doing it anymore. Nobody really knows exactly why, but
Okay, well,
Okay.
thank
Thanks,
you.
Carol.
That's a great update. Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Michelle and Jenny and Adam and whoever else is working on this. This is super.
And
What else is on?
status on the looters.
Yes, that's our next
Okay,
question,
well,
status on the
okay.
looters.
just wanna make sure. that
We
you guys-
tried to like.
So the looters, I thought we
I kinda
voted
know
them.
that.
You did, you did, but it
Right.
hasn't actually, I think with just having the three girls
The
and
three
that-
girls?
on the select board,
Oh.
and they had a lot going on, they haven't actually gotten it put into their hands.
Hmm.
And in the meantime, I also needed to get that map updated,
Okay,
which is now with Central Vermont Regional Planning. I got the shape files from Brandy that was
Mhm.
sent to me and Brian over at Central Vermont Regional Planning. I will show you just to remind you in case anybody,
I don't think we have to send them the maps. We gotta send them the looters. And they
Right.
can, start dealing with that whole thing, and then we can get them the
right,
maps
well, and
whenever
I
they're ready.
talked to both Camilla, but most recently Rebecca, as to when it was gonna be on the agenda. And it's gonna be on the, it's gonna be on the July 15th.
Jesus Christ,
Well, they only do it twice, okay,
that's
I
ridiculous.
mean, right now, I'm just telling you what Rebecca said to me, their June 24th one, which is their next meeting, is June 24th.
All we have to do is get it to them. They've gotta have their lawyers look at it. They've gotta have all kinds of
Oh,
stuff.
the lawyer's already looked at it.
Oh, he has.
Yes,
I'll
yes.
work on that.
The town attorney has already looked at it.
Okay.
So they're gonna get it.
Yeah.
And then it's just a matter of them either incorporating, agreeing to the suggestions made by the town attorney.
So
and-
that's
and-
what they're gonna do at that meeting.
I don't know if they'll do that at that meeting, but that's what needs to be done, okay? The same as this map needs to be changed to be up to date.
How can we expedite getting the map changed?
I I'm gonna call him again. I sent him emails and, I called him today hoping to get a reply. And I just want an idea of when, because as long as we can get it before we actually warn their hearing,
Yeah,
then we're fine. I just
that's what
want to
the
make sure.
select board warns they're here.
Yes, yes.
So the select board, when you say they're hearing, is that a different date than the July 15th?
Yes,
Yeah, no,
yes,
July
yes.
15th thing is just for them to
For them
say,
to officially
hey,
say
do we
we now
want to change
have it.
anything and send it back to the planning commission?
Because the select board, once they get it from us,
Mhm.
they have a certain period of time within which they have to warn
Right,
their hearing, which
right,
is like 120 days or something.
right. But I
And
mean-
then, once the select board does their edits, which is
Mhm.
incorporating whatever they decide to do based on what Nick has said, the town attorney, and us giving them
Maps.
it's really just this zoning map that we have 4 properties that we had to correct, that we agreed to. And that, then they're just gonna very quickly and briefly come back. I think, say updated. I think we decided when we had Sharon with us, when you guys voted this out, basically, voted for it to be forwarded to the select board.
2 months ago.
That the map and the statutory things that Nick was suggesting, the town attorney, that those were not considered major things, that we
No.
don't have to pull it back to
Right.
the PC.
Right.
So that means the select board, I just think that once they warn their hearing, we've got to make sure the public has all the information, which means the maps, which is this map in particular that's being changed. We have all the other maps. It's just.
Why don't we
this one.
tell who's doing the map?
Central Vermont Regional
Yeah,
Planning.
why don't we tell those guys that they're having a hearing on the 15th and we have to have it by then?
Okay. I think that's reasonable, and I think that can be done. This is what I've been trying to get from them, and saying, can you tell me?
We gotta give them a
can you tell me-
deadline.
Can you tell me when?
We
You
gotta
know?
give them a deadline. Say,
Okay,
hey, we
all
need
right.
this by the 15th.
Please confirm you're gonna get that done. Okay. All right. And the only other thing is Mad River Valley Planning.
And the select
updates.
board can't meet about this before that, before July
Talk
15th.
to Camilla. I'm just telling you what Rebecca told
Okay.
me as far as what that it was, they don't really have to do anything at that meeting. They just have to have in their minutes that they have received it. But I don't know if
Well,
they're,
they have to
but it's gonna start the clock and they will then hopefully be able to set their, Here.
set their meeting, their public meeting.
yeah.
Yes, it is frustrating that it's taking so
Yeah.
long. The whole process has been really frustrating. Okay, you know what, it's 8:50, I'm really tired.
Okay.
Does anyone have anything else they want to say, or
Is there anything we need to know from Mad River Valley Planning District, or
not
can it
that I
wait?
can remember?
Okay, all right. It's on here, I just wanna check it out.
Not that I can remember.
But based on what you heard from Michelle and from the Warren wind down plans, can we just approve, if that's appropriate, that we present a permit application to the select board whenever we can get on their agenda for an event by the subcommittee?
Yeah, I don't think we're doing this on behalf of the planning
Yeah.
commission, so we're just community members
Mm.
applying for an event permit.
Okay,
to the
so it's
select
not
board.
related,
It's not related to this organization. We
okay.
were just giving an update for funsies, I
Yeah,
guess.
I just think it's
No, it's
really
good.
exciting you guys took it on, and yeah, I don't
Yeah.
think it needs to,
But
It's a
I think-
really great idea. It's a
And I
great-
think,
really a good
well,
idea.
it's part of the planning commission, I think, reaching out in a
Yeah,
Yeah.
not
In a
overt way.
broad
I mean, I'd
general-
love it if you could say, put a plug in and sponsored by the Warren Planning
Support.
Commission.
Well, you'll all
members,
be there,
supported by the
so-
Warren Planning Commission. Great. Great.
Yeah, and maybe we'll
Yeah.
have a table to talk
Yeah.
about.
We definitely,
Yeah,
yeah.
how
we're at the
awesome.
table.
Yeah,
Cool.
don't, take a little credit for the PC, since this is where it originated, but
sure.
Sure.
yes.
It originated at the charrette, or.
Oh,
I haven't seen that.
Other town vision.
That's so great.
All right.
All right.
Excellent.
My
Then I
son's
would
doing
entertain a
this.
motion to adjourn, if there is one.
My
Is
son's
there a
doing
motion?
this.
Motion.
Second motion.
And there's a second?
Yeah.
We have a motion, we have a second. The meeting is
Aye.
adjourned at 8:51 PM. Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ruth, is there a permit
Alright.
application for events?
That I don't know.
PSI.
Yeah, I feel like I got a map laid out.
Internet.
I don't, I'm lost.